Hello and welcome to segment 5 of Plato is Still Relevant Today, an annotated summary of Plato's Republic. Today, let's zoom on in here. Today we're going to look just a quick moment of where we left off on segment 4 and the dialectic of Plato, which we will get into further. And we'll compare it to the dialectic of Hegel. Since I got a very good question from one of you out there about this, I'll address it momentarily. Then we'll move into the lifestyle and the diet of the people in Plato's city of words, and this notion of delighting in the company of others. Very important with the dialectic and in a big part of Socrates' life. Finally, we'll look at how the people disagree with Socrates and need a spoiled city. Finally, we'll look at education and why education is important in developing a just person and justice within a community. As a matter of fact, about 4 books in the Republic, if not more, are devoted to education. This is why Jean-Jacques Rousseau, another perennial name like Plato, I mean, there are certain people, Shakespeare, Plato, that exist in all times and all places, not just in their time and place. And Rousseau, I think, is one of them, and he says Plato's Republic is the definitive book on how people should be educated. I don't know if we can go that far, but it certainly is a very good book on education. We'll look at their education briefly, and then finally we'll end up on, Socrates was killed for impiety, and his notion that he wanted to change the stories that they had about God, and what a big impact that had in that time period. All right, let us get started. First of all, the dialectic of Plato. The idea of 2 lovers, philosophy, phileo sophi, love of wisdom. 2 lovers discussing each person's input is valuable to getting to the best solution or getting to the truth of their argument. It's Guisson, Etienne Guisson, argued that to a Greek, becoming a philosopher didn't mean becoming a god. Becoming a philosopher, one was reminded they are a god and behave as such. And the dialectic between 2 people sees the divinity in the other, and the 2 divinities talk and grow toward understanding the forms. If thinking alone, you practice the dialectic up and try to reach over that line to where you can get out of the world of becoming into the world of forms and grasp the form justice as opposed to how it's practiced in this world. Someone murders one other person, and the person that did the murder supposedly is set free. Everybody says justice wasn't done. That isn't even close to what Socrates means by justice. By the way, the dialectic of Hegel believed there was a spirit, I'm going to borrow from Carl Jung, a collective unconscious that is in everyone, but collectively motivates action. And what a society does in response to the drives of the collective unconscious forms a dialectic that moves history. Plato's dialectic, both between 2 people and individually, in a way, if enough individuals could be educated well enough to achieve a dialectic with the forms, could move history. But Socrates' focus is more individual, whereas Hegel was more after the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, and how the spirit of the times kept changing, from a dialectic between actual becoming actions and this spirit that drives us forward. All right, let's move to the life and the diet in Socrates' city of words. He's already said we're going to have 4 or 5 people. We'll plant grains. We'll have wine. We'll have clothing, houses, shoes. We'll dress almost naked in the summer. Now we'll have to bundle up in the winter. We'll grind barley and wheat. We'll make patties from the barley, loaves from the wheat. And we'll serve these on reeds of fresh leaves. We'll sit in bunches of myrtle and vines. We'll feast, hymning and singing to the gods, and washing it all down with wine. And best of all, we will delight in each other's company. And we'll be very careful not to produce beyond our means, and that way we'll avoid the twin evils of poverty and war. I want to spend some time on this delight in the company of others. In the book of John, if you allow me to go to the Bible, Jesus says, "I and God the Father are one." The people pick up stones and they're going to stone them to death. Oh God, imagine that, throwing rocks at someone until you kill them. But they're ready, and Jesus says, "I've done a lot of works for you. A lot of divine works. Why are you stoning me?" And they said several things, blasphemy, but you're a man calling yourself a God. And then Jesus says, "Does it not say in your law, I said, ye are all gods?" And if you go back to Psalms 82:6, it says the same thing. Ye are all gods. Matter of fact, our intellectual forebears, the American transcendentalists, saw all humans as a speck of God. Emmanuel Levinas, one of the greatest thinkers he died in 1995, let's say our era. Mr. Levinas said, when you encounter someone, you can see their social mask, or you can see through it and see their face. And he argued, in the face of the other, I hear the command of God, which is, I'm responsible for the other. I am to love the enemy. There are a lot of people who see divinity in the other, and I tell you, seeing divinity in everyone you meet, wouldn't you delight in their company? And this is where Socrates is after, delighting in the company of others. Well, Glaucon speaks up and he says, "Socrates, wait a minute, no meat?" And Socrates, almost not hearing Glaucon, says, "Oh, I forgot, we'll need salt and olives and cheese, and we'll have greens to boil, and for dessert we'll have figs, nuts, berries, we'll roast acorns and chestnuts. Oh, in this way we'll live in health and joy to a ripe old age." And Glaucon said, "Socrates, what you're feeding these people, sitting in myrtle leaves, and what you're feeding them, that's slop for hogs. Your people, our people, need the comforts of civilization. We need meat. We need comfortable chairs. We need entertainment. We need money for mistresses." And Socrates goes, "Oh, interesting. You want a spoiled city. Oh, I get it now. All right. So if it's a spoiled city, our necessities are going to grow. We're going to eat up the natural resources. Our land will become scarce, so we're going to need to take the neighbor's land. Okay? We'll also have to give our souls over to an unlimited possession of wealth, because there'll be no end to our wants and desires." Glaucon says, "Socrates, this is perfectly necessary." Kind of like King Lear, reason not the need. All right, so we're going to give ourselves over to this. Socrates thinks about it a minute and he goes, I think we've discovered the origins of war." "Really, Socrates, what's that?" "Wanting more than you need. Once you want more than you need, everything becomes scarce and everything becomes something to fight over." Then Socrates says, "We'll need an army. We're going to have to create an army now if we're going to have a spoiled city." And the people said, well, can't they fight themselves? You know, can't the shoemakers just pick up what... And Socrates said, no, we've already established everybody's got to do what they're naturally fit to do. Well, if everybody's got to do what they're naturally fit to do, we've got to find what nature a soldier has to have. What is the nature of our warrior class? And once we find that, then we've got to educate it. And a couple of the people listening must have looked at Socrates funny, because he said, do you think education is trivial? No, I guess it isn't, Socrates. Just because they have the natural inclination or the natural ability. I mean, think of LeBron James. He's 6'8", he's got a 7-foot wingspan. I mean, he's got the natural inclination to be a great basketball player, but I wonder if he would have been if he hadn't been exposed to basketball or didn't have the education as a basketball player. You need the natural ability and the inclination. So, our guardians must work only on war. And the type of body they have is clear. The LeBron James type of body, that's clear. But what kind of spirit must they have? I mean, they've got to be spirited and courageous and willing to fight. But they got to refrain from fighting each other or the citizens of the city. We need opposites. We need a tension between opposites, gentleness and spiritedness. Is this found in nature? And Socrates looks down and there's a dog right there. And he goes, well, look, right here, a dog. A dog will attack an enemy it doesn't even know, but be kind to its master who may be even mean to it. So yes, if we can find it in nature, we can get our soldiers to be both spirited and gentle. So here's the character we're looking for. A big, strong guy who's courageous, but yet gentle to those he needs to protect. How are we going to educate it? Could we zoom in here a little bit? Just a little bit? The Greek education was a balance between gymnastics and poetry. This is my version of a seesaw. Poetry meant musical. Music was also their synonym for education. Educating the inside of the person, the introverted self. Gymnastics meant exercise, health, diet, and so forth. And these things, if they're balanced, if the body and soul are balanced, they were considered musical, well-tuned, or the Greek word, educated. So we've got to educate our guardians in both gymnastics and poetry. And we're going to start with stories, because a well-developed mind will lead a body. A well-developed body, the mind might not necessarily follow. So he goes, we've got to change all the stories we have about our gods. That is, we can't have Zeus castrating Kronos. We can't have Zeus chaining, or Kronos chaining Prometheus to the wall. We can't have Kronos eating his children. You can't tell these stories lightly to children. We can't even tell these stories at all. Our stories must teach excellence. Our gods are only truly good. They're the only source of good. We'll find another source of evil. 2 rules. Our gods only do good, and there is no shape-shifting. No Zeus and Hermes coming to city dressed as paupers to see who people will take, which people will take care of and which won't. The gods are what they seem, truly good. Now this doesn't seem like much because we're looking at the Homeric myths. But what if your Sunday school teacher started teaching your kids, for instance, Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 6, or Deuteronomy 6, 10 through 12, where God says to the people of Israel, take all these cities, take the Canaanites, take all these other 6 nations, show them no mercy, take their possessions, kill all the men, keep the women and cattle for booty. In other words, here is our loving Christian God saying, plunder and kill all. Socrates is saying, we got to change our stories about the gods. What if your Sunday school teacher started reading through the Bible, 1st and 2nd Kings, early Deuteronomy, and started making our God look less than a loving, kind Father? It would cause havoc. Well, this, though seemingly trite piece of the Republic, was part of what caused a lot of havoc for Socrates. Next, we will continue to build the Republic, or go into how we will educate the citizens. Thank you. Please subscribe and like or dislike, and let's make Socrates part of your everyday life. Thank you.